Hi everyone, welcome back to the FAR classes. In this particular video, I'll be walking you through in detail about accounting treatment in the books of Lessor for the lease accounting, and we'll do some practice question as well. And this is part 3 of ASC 842 series of classes. Please go through part 1 and part 2 also before jumping into it. So let's dive into to understand more in detail. Accounting from the lease side. So now, after the break, we'll be starting the accounting treatment in the books of Lessor. Right? In the books of Lessor, there are three categories of lease which can be accounted for. First one is sales type lease, second is finance lease, and third is operating lease. Firstly, we need to check whether that lease is a sales type lease or not. If it is a sales type lease, then we need to recognize the accounting, or we need to book the accounting. We need to do the accounting as per the sales type lease, right? If it is not a sales type lease, then second, we need to evaluate whether it's a finance lease, direct finance lease. If it is a direct finance lease, then we need to account for according to direct finance lease. If neither it is a sales type lease nor a direct finance lease, then only it will be considered as operating lease, right? So logical flow, or you can say chronological order, is first is sales type lease, second is direct finance lease. If none of these criteria are met, then only the lease is considered as operating lease. So like we discussed earlier also, the criteria for sales type lease from the lessor's books and finance lease in the lessee books is very much same, right? If you see over here, you'll see all those 5 points. The first one, if you see at the commencement date, a lease is a sales type lease if it meets any one of the following criteria. First one is the lessee transfer ownership of the underlying asset to the lessee by the end of the lease term, right? Ownership transfer. Second is the lessee grant the lessee an option to purchase. So lessor grant the lessee an option to purchase the underlying asset that the lessee is reasonably certain to exercise. So it means the lessor is giving a material right or an option to the lessee so that he'll be more than likely to purchase, to buy that option or to exercise that option because it is being economically beneficial for him or her. Third is the lease term is for the major part of the remaining economic life. What is the major part of remaining economic life?
75%.
75%, absolutely true, right? So here, look at the note mentioned here, not applicable for leases that commence at or near the end of the underlying asset's economic life. If you are giving an asset on lease when it is almost scrap, then this criteria is not required, right? Fourth is the present value of the
But अगर
sum.
last में दी मतलब towards the end of the remaining life, और उसपे we are giving the by the end of the lease we'll
Yes.
transfer the ownership. Then it will be
Mhm.
considered or not? Because उसपे फिर first वाला point आ जाएगा.
No, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. For example, the car has a life of 10 years. So in the 10th year beginning, you have given the car on lease for, let's say, 9 months. Right? In that case of scenario, how you treat it? Right? You need to look at all the 5 points individually. Right? So it's clearly mentioned any one of the 5. Right? So this point may not be valid, but the other point may be valid, like transfer of the ownership, right? Or you can say option to purchase after 9 months, or maybe the present value of the lease term. So that also you need to evaluate individually. So any of these criteria, but generally if it is like just for a 9-month, then it may not fall into the sales type lease or finance lease. It can be operating lease, but if any of these 1, 2, 4 and 5 is meeting, then it is considered as a finance type lease. But for
But
this
जो गुरमेहर
particular,
हाँ, ये जो सर गुरमेहर ने अभी क्वेश्चन करा उसमें मुझे ये समझ आया कि व्हाट ही इज आस्किंग इज कि सपोज 10 ईयर की लाइफ है, अब उसमें क्या हुआ कि इसमें जो बन रहा है उसमें रिमेनिंग इकोनॉमिक लाइफ लिखा है। सो अब मैं अगर 10th ईयर के स्टार्टिंग में उसको देता हूँ लीज पे
yes,
और 9 मंथ के लिए दे देता हूँ, तो वो मेजर इकोनॉमिक लाइफ का पार्ट हो गया एंड देन इट विल फॉल अंडर दिस कंडीशन एंड वुड बी कंसिडर्ड एज अ फाइनेंस लीज, करेक्ट?
No, that's what it says. If it is not applicable when it is like near to end of the underlying assets economic life, right? So then this third point you should not be considering. But if it is meeting first point, second point, fourth point, or fifth point, then you can consider.
Basically, after the end of the 10th year, the asset will be transferred to the lessee. In that case, first point is met, although the third point is not meeting, so we'll still consider it as like sales type.
Absolutely, finance lease, yeah, sales type lease.
correct,
Yes,
correct.
that's very
ठीक
true.
है.
So only this third point criteria you should not consider.
Okay.
Fourth is again the present value of the
So
sum of
इसमें
the.
ना maybe in the bracket or somewhere we can mention any one of these.
It is mentioned here. If meet anyone.
Okay.
Here we have highlighted also.
Okay.
Underline कर देते हैं. Okay, so fourth point is the present value of the sum of the lease payment and any residual value guaranteed by the lessee that is not already reflected in the lease payment equal to or exceed substantially all the fair value. Substantially mean more than
90%.
90%, right? Fifth is the underlying asset is of such specialized nature that it is expected to have no alternative use. No alternative use means?
So this is already उसका life over हो गया, कोई alternative नहीं.
No. Lessor cannot give that asset on lease to anyone else because it is dedicatedly and specifically made for the lessee. Right? We discussed some example like fire truck, fire extinguisher truck, or maybe like ambulance, right? Or maybe like you can say any specific platform has been made for specific company designing or dimension, like, or maybe for example like any trunky project has been made for any specific company, right? Let's say water treatment plant has been made for any particular company which has been given on lease. So that water treatment plant you cannot extract from one place to another place to any other user, right? Make sense?
Got it.
सर ये वाली जो कंडीशंस हमने पढ़ी है सेल्स टाइप लीज की, और जो अभी हमने इससे पहले 5 कंडीशंस पढ़ी
फाइनेंस लीज इज सेम,
फाइनेंस बिल्कुल सेम है. तो इसका नाम मतलब क्या कुछ अकाउंटिंग में फर्क आता है क्या? मतलब क्यों हमने ऐसा स्टैंडर्ड ने इसको डिफरेंशिएट करा है कुछ? मतलब मैं ये
so
कंफ्यूज हो
yes,
रहा हूँ.
very good point. So standard is looking at from both the, you can say, in perspective. One is from the leasee perspective. When you are receiving any asset, right? When you are receiving any asset at that point of time, it is considered as a finance lease. But when you are a lessor, you are giving an asset, whether you should recognize the revenue at that point of time or would you defer the revenue?
Okay.
Right? You should, if any of these criteria are met, then you should recognize the revenue upfront. Hence, it is considered as a sales type lease.
Okay.
So basically, from the lessor standpoint of view, why it is being differentiated between sales type lease, finance lease, and operating lease to recognize the revenue.
Okay. Correct.
Because in a way, let me finish. In a way, at the end of the economic life, you are transferring the assets, or buyer is already using major part of the assets, or buyer is already giving you more than the fair value of the money. So it is like a sale. You should recognize the revenue.
Okay.
So that is the intent behind this sales
इसमें
type.
सर जो इसमें वो हमने जो 5 कंडीशंस पढ़ी थी वो लेसी की बुक्स में थी, है ना, जो खुद के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से पढ़ा. अब मैंने इसमें लेसर की बुक्स में सेल्स टाइप लीज पढ़ ली. अब जो सेल्स टाइप लीज की कंडीशन है और लेसर की बुक्स में ही फाइनेंस लीज की कंडीशन है, वो भी अलग है क्या? उसमें कुछ डिफरेंस है?
थोड़ा सा डिफरेंस है. देयर वेरी माइनर डिफरेंस. वी आर कमिंग टू दैट. Just after one example, we'll come into that. So that is like, this is the major condition. So if this condition is meeting and the collection is certain, then it can be considered as a finance lease. We'll come to that. Okay, let's do an illustration. sorry. So annual lease receipt over 4 years is $42,500, and useful life of the asset is 4 years. Residual value is nil, and interest rate is given 7%. Present value of the lease receipt, it is 42,500 multiplied by 4 years, right? Multiply by discount factor at 7%. Present value factor at 7% is $154,000, right? So all this information is given to you in question, right? And the asset which you are giving on lease, the book value of the asset is 124,000. So these are the facts given to you in questions, right? Now you need to do the recordings. So first you need to identify whether this lease is a sales type lease or not. So how do you identify whether this lease is a sales type lease or not? If you see, present value of the lease receipt is how much?
Sir, 4 years.
154.
154,000, which is more than 124,000. Yes. Present
Yes,
value
sir.
of the lease receipt is 154,000, which is more than the asset value.
Yes, sir.
So it is considered as a sales type lease.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And second, if you see, the useful life is 4 years and the lease is also 4 years, right? So it is considered as a sales type lease.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. वही बोल रहा हूँ.
So now, how do you do the accounting? First one is to record the lease. To record the lease. Lease receivable account debit with how much? Present value of the lease receivable, which is 154,000. Then second is to sales. So how do you generally book sales entry? Account receivable to sales,
Debtor to
Yes,
sales.
sir. AR to sales, yeah.
right? Same way, here also you are booking lease receivable to sales revenue, 154, 154. Make sense?
Yes, sir. ये तो clear है.
On the other side, when you make a sales, you also release inventory and book cost of goods sold.
Yes, sir.
Right?
COGS
So-
to inventory.
COGS to inventory, generally you make. So same way here also COGS one is on cost, and here you are giving asset. So you are de-recognizing the asset. So instead of inventory, you are de-recognizing the asset because you are giving asset on lease. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? So cost of goods sold account debit to the asset which you have given on lease at the cost, at the book value, which is 124,000 they have given you. Right? So net impact of this entry is 30,000 gross profit in your income statement.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
you have account lease receivable 154,000 and you have revenue of 154,000, right? So next entry when you will be making, when you
एक
receive.
क्वेश्चन था
Yes,
सर, कैश फ्लो और रेवेन्यू रिकॉग्निशन में बहुत डिफरेंस होगा ना, टाइम डिफरेंस या?
yes. So we are coming to cash flow. This entry is for the cash receipt. After first year end, you are receiving first installment, or you can say lease payment of
क्योंकि
40.
लेकिन क्योंकि मैं एक ईयर 1 में ही सारा सेल्स बुक कर रहा हूँ, मतलब रिकॉग्नाइज कर रहा हूँ, तो इस वो पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से मैं बोल रहा था एक्चुअली.
Yes. No, you are right. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So the collection would be over the period of 4 years.
सो सर, स्टेटमेंट, फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट में या इनकम स्टेटमेंट में थोड़ा मिसलीडिंग नहीं होगा?
No. I'll show you how it will come in.
हाँ, मेरा भी ये डाउट है. तो प्रॉफिट तो हमने अपफ्रंट फर्स्ट ईयर में दिखा दिया 30,000 का.
Because it's a sales type lease. So you have already made the sales. Like what is accrual concept? It's same, right? Accrual concept also says you will book the sales as and when risk and reward has been transferred, right? That's what normally how we book the sales. Revenue recognition standard we have studied. right? As and when the performance obligations are satisfied, you can recognize the revenue. That's what we understood in ASC 606.
Yes, sir.
Here also, if you see these 5 points, it's clearly says like ownership has been transferred at the end of the lease term and it is being confirmed and material option is being there, or economic life he is already using, he is already committed you to make the payment for more than the book value. So
but
these
he'll
are
use this asset over a period of 4 years. So end of the tenure will transfer the ownership, right? So we'll earn the revenue over a period of 4 years, not just in the first year itself. Yeah, doubt,
No.
I don't know
Yes,
whether I'm
no,
correct.
your point is very much valid. So this was same is Indian accounting standard. What you are saying is exactly same followed in Indian accounting standard. Earlier ASC 842 was also following the same. But now new ASC 842s or IFRS 16 says you have already made the sale because you have already have a signed agreement and the person is committed to make you payment in the legal document. So you have already transferred any which ways physical position to the lessee, right? In that case of scenario, you should recognize the revenue. That is what the change from
So
the previous
basically,
standard.
sir, we are saying कि हमने जैसी एसेट ट्रांसफर किया हमारी परफॉर्मेंस ऑब्लिगेशन मीट हो गई, इसलिए
Yes.
हमने रेवेन्यू रिकॉर्ड कर लिया. अब कैश आना इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग, वो आता
Yes.
रहेगा.
Yes. Yes. Same way,
Okay.
account receivable also, like collection may come later, or there may be some bad debts or provision for doubtful debt or actual bad debts. That is a later part. But your performance obligation, you have satisfied. You have left with no other major performance obligation.
Right. Okay.
Gurmehar, Prashant, does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay.
So now, if we draw this example over here, it says 42,500, and this total is your, and this present value of this is 154,000. It's assumed. I'm just, for the simplicity, I'm doing it divide by 2. So now come over here. So when you are making the lease payment, cash payment you are receiving, so at that point of time your cash will get debit, like debit what comes in and credit what goes out. So what is going out is your receivable. So you are reducing your receivable and increasing your cash balance with the 42,500, right? In this 42,500 of the cash which you are receiving, we have two components. One is the present value of the receivable, and the second you have is interest component also, right? So that interest component need to be first added. So this is my mistake. This entry should go first. First you need to book the interest, which is 7805. How does this calculate? 154,000 minus 42,500, 111,500 multiplied by 7%. So that 7805 is your interest earned for the current year. So total amount is 154,000 plus 7805 minus 42,500 is your remaining lease receivable balance. Make sense? Any doubt here?
No, sir.
Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Prashant?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Kashish? Fine. Okay. And then last one is cash
So
account
we'll
liability.
keep on decreasing it every year.
Yes.
Next year we'll decrease another 42,500 from 111,500.
Yes. So first you need to add interest into the receivable, then reduce the collection.
Okay.
Okay. So let's do two quick questions over here. The first one is a lease is recorded
सर एक
as
बार
a
ऊपर जाओगे, सॉरी मैं एक चीज मिस हो गई सर। रिसीवेबल हमने पूरा कंसोलिडेटेड बुक कर तो दिया है 154,000, फिर हम इंटरेस्ट को ऐड कर रहे हैं उसके अंदर।
Yes, this is present value of the lease receipt. This is the present value.
ओके ओके ओके
So every year you will be adding interest.
ओके ओके गॉट इट।
Very good point. Okay, so let's do two quick questions. First one is, a lease is recorded as a sales type lease by the lessor. The interest income in net investment in the lease should be, first, recognized in full as interest revenue at the lease commencement. Second, amortized over the period of the lease as interest revenue using effective interest method. Third is amortized over the period of the lease as interest revenue using straight line method. Fourth is recognized in full as manufacturer or dealer profit at the lease commencement. What you should do for the interest income?
सर सेकंड ही है सर, अभी वही कर रहे थे हम,
Right?
जैसे जैसे होता रहता है वैसे वैसे वी आर यूजिंग
प्रेजेंट वैल्यू को
प्रेजेंट वैल्यू
बेसिकली
करके
अमोर्टाइज कर रहे हैं, उसको इंटरेस्ट कर रहे हैं।
करेक्ट
Same जो हमने यहाँ देखा 7805.
क्या सर है, राइट।
So every year we'll keep on adding based on the base available of the receivable. Right?
Yes,
So it will
sir.
not be a straight line. So that's the reason third option is wrong, and it is not a profit, it's your interest income.
राइट।
Next
सर एक
question.
चीज पूछनी थी सर,
Yes.
हम एसेट कॉस्ट पे क्यों नहीं इंटरेस्ट लगा रहे?
Say
प्रेजेंट
that
वैल्यू
again.
सर, हम एसेट कॉस्ट पे इंटरेस्ट क्यों नहीं लगा रहे इंस्टेड ऑफ प्रेजेंट वैल्यू पे क्यों लगा रहे? क्योंकि प्रेजेंट
Because
वैल्यू
the collection would be on the sales price.
ओके ओके ओके
Because collection will be based on the sales price, not on the cost.
हाँ हाँ ओके ओके ठीक है सर।
Cool. Question of the day. On August 1st of the current year, K company leased a machine to D company for a 6-year period, requiring a payment of $10,000 at the beginning of each year. So whenever you have present value question, this is also very important, whether the installment is at the beginning or at the close. Accordingly, you need to select the PV table. The machine cost is 48,000, which is fair value at the lease date. So fair value of the machine today is 48,000, right? And has an estimated life of 8 years. So 8 years is the life and 6 years is the lease period, right? So 6 years divided by 8 years, 75%. So majority economic life is used, right? With no residual value. So K implicit interest rate is 10% and present value factor is as follows. So rate of interest is 10% and PV factor is given below. So at the commencement, okay, present value of the annuity is this. Present value of the annuity is this. K appropriately recorded the lease as a sales type lease at the commencement of the lease before any payment. The lease receivable account balance should be how much? So you need to calculate the lease receivable. Do the math. Can you help me doing the math? How much is the lease? 10,000?
यस सर 10,000 है फर्स्ट, क्योंकि बिगनिंग पे है तो उसका वैसे ही 1 हो जाएगा प्रेजेंट वैल्यू फैक्टर। बाकी का 4.791 से कर सकते हैं हम उसको टोटल को।
So present value of the annuity due of $1 at 10% for a 6 period is 4.79. So if you see this and present value factor is this, sorry. $47,910.
सर ये 5 ईयर का एन्युटी नहीं देनी चाहिए, क्योंकि फर्स्ट ईयर का तो हम 1 ही लेते हैं प्रेजेंट वैल्यू फैक्टर। तो सेकंड ईयर से हम डिस्काउंटिंग स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं।
फर्स्ट ईयर के एंड से सेकंड के स्टार्टिंग में।
हाँ, तो 5 ईयर का हम एन्युटी लेंगे ना?
नहीं, इसमें इफ यू सी पॉइंट नंबर ए सेज present value of an annuity due $1. Due means like today.
ओके,
हाँ
Due today, right? At the end लिखा होता, so then your point was right.
तो 5 लेते हैं। ओके, ठीक है।
Right? Make sense? Gurmehar, Prashant,
सर एक बार
Ashish.
फिर से समझाना।
So here the call of the question is $10,000 every year the lessee will be paying to the lessor for a period of 6 years, right? So how much he will be paying? $60,000, right? And the life of the asset is 8 years, and you are taking the asset on a lease for a 6 year. That means you are using it for substantial economic period, right? Accordingly, it is clearly given K has appropriately recorded this as a sales type lease, right? So that he has done correctly, right? You agree to it? Is it a sales type lease or not?
Yes sir.
yes sir.
Right? And then the call of the question is at the commencement of the lease, before any payment, the lease receivable account balance should be how much? So lease receivable account debit to sales should be for how much amount? Present value of the lease receivable. Simple.
So total को multiply.
Yes sir.
Right.
Simple. That's what we discuss here also. Present value of the lease receivable 154,000 we have discussed here. Same is the case. So present value is 4.791 because it's for 6 period, right? Not for 8 period.
Yes.
So point number B is not relevant information for you. It's just to confuse you.
Got it. Got it.
Right? Okay, so I think we can take a break over here, and then tomorrow we'll start on direct, in the next class we'll start on direct finance lease and then operating lease, and then we jump onto the other additional topic. Right, I'll send you the copy of these notes, so maybe like during the week go through the notes, and if you guys have any doubt we can connect in the next week and discuss those. Right, any specific doubt you have from any previous class, so we can set up some time tomorrow or day after tomorrow.
Done sir.
Okay, cool. Enjoy rest of your Sunday.
Okay,
Bye.
sir. Bye.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
sir.
Bye, sir.